Title: My husband called me while I was visiting a client in another state. I'm divorcing you, and I've already sold our apartment to start my life with my new girlfriend. Enjoy looking for a new place. He laughed. I kept my tone neutral, replying, "Sounds good." After I got home, his smile quickly disappeared when the call that changed everything. The hotel room smelled like lemon polish and cheap perfume. I was halfway through preparing slides for a client pitch when my phone lit up with a familiar number. Aaron, my husband. I hadn't expected to hear from him. Not that day. Not while I was 2 states away on business. And especially not after how cold he'd been for the past few months. I answered with a neutral tone. "Hey." His voice was giddy, almost boyish. "Kira, just wanted to let you know, I'm filing for divorce." I sat up straighter in the stiff hotel armchair. "Oh? Yeah," he said, laughing. "Already sold the apartment. My lawyer filed the papers this morning. I'm starting over with Becca." Becca, his co-worker, the one he swore was just a friend, even when I found a perfume bottle in his glove compartment. The one whose name popped up in late-night notifications he always claimed were business-related. I didn't say any of that. Instead, I said calmly, "Sounds good." He chuckled. "Wow, that's it? No screaming? No crying?" "Nope," I said, sipping the hotel's bitter coffee. "Congratulations, Aaron. You'll probably want to start looking for a new place. Escrow closed yesterday." And there was a pause. Then I said, "Thanks for the heads up." He laughed again. "Man, you're cold. But hey, this is best for both of us. Becca and I are going to Miami. Fresh start. Sunshine. Freedom. Hope you find something decent." I hung up before he could say another word, not out of rage, but out of clarity. The years before the call, Aaron and I had been married 8 years. We met when I was still working long hours in marketing, and he was just starting his property flipping side hustle. Back then, he was ambitious, charming, a little reckless, but sincere. I helped him build that business, created his brand, handled the books, built the network. We made a good team, until success went to his head and loyalty stopped being profitable. The coldness started about a year ago. Less eye contact, passive-aggressive jokes at dinner, late-night strategy meetings that conveniently never made it into the calendar. I had my suspicions. I just didn't have confirmation until that call. But now I had something better than confirmation. I had control. Because while he was out closing escrow and sipping cocktails with Becca, he'd forgotten one tiny, inconvenient fact. The apartment wasn't just our property. It was in my name. When the door swings shut. By the time I landed back in Chicago the next evening, the weather had shifted. A light drizzle kissed the sidewalks, and the clouds hung low, like the city itself knew something was about to change. I took a rideshare straight from the airport to my condo. Aaron had cleared out. The living room was a mess of missing furniture and forgotten cables. A half-empty moving box sat on the floor, the flaps splayed open like a wound. A pile of torn envelopes lay on the kitchen counter, and the fridge was humming with nothing inside it but spoiled takeout and a half-used bottle of Becca's almond milk. He hadn't even bothered to clean. I walked through the space quietly, every step measured. This wasn't the home I once loved. It was a tomb. But what he didn't know, what he never bothered to remember, was that I had seen this coming long before he picked up the phone. The paper trail. He forgot. The apartment had always been in my name. Back when Aaron's credit was still recovering from a failed investment in a bogus crypto startup, I was the one with the 800+ score and steady income. The mortgage? Mine. The down payment? A mix of my savings and a small inheritance from my aunt, none of which Aaron ever touched. The title? Sole owner, Kira Morgan. But Aaron, confident in his charm and clueless in the details, never checked the paperwork. He'd sold the apartment behind my back. Or he thought he had. The call that shattered his smile. I pulled out my phone and dialed Vanessa, the real estate attorney I'd known since college. "Hey, V. He did it." "I figured he might," she said without skipping a beat. "The buyer's agent sent over preliminary documents to transfer title yesterday. I flagged it immediately." "And?" She chuckled. "I froze the transaction. They can't proceed without your signature. And since you're the sole legal owner, he's got a problem." A slow smile spread across my face. Perfect. Aaron didn't sell our apartment. He tried to sell my apartment. And now, he had a girlfriend, no home, and a legal nightmare waiting to eat his little, fresh start, alive. Damage assessment. I walked into what used to be his home office. Empty. Just cords and dust, and a single half-finished glass of scotch on the window ledge. The man thought he could take everything and leave me with nothing. But the thing about burning bridges? You better be damn sure the person on the other side doesn't own the river. I picked up the glass, dumped it into the sink, and rinsed it slowly. Then I opened my laptop and pulled up a file folder I'd titled months ago. Exit plan. If, when, he fails me. Time to execute. A man drowning in his own lies. Saturday morning came with a steady breeze and the scent of liberation. I met Vanessa at her office downtown. Sleek, modern, quiet, like everything Aaron's ego wasn't. She already had a folder waiting for me on the table, color-coded and neatly tabbed. "He forged your signature on the seller's disclosure," she said calmly. I blinked. "He what?" Vanessa nodded, flipping to a copy of the form. "And the power of attorney he sent the buyer's agent was a fake. Poorly done. Not even notarized. Amateur hour." I leaned back in my chair and exhaled slowly. "I want to press charges." Vanessa smiled like she'd been waiting for those words. "Already filed a report. His lawyer should be receiving the first wave of fire by Monday morning." The real score. Aaron wasn't just trying to leave me. He was trying to erase me. Before the trip, I'd begun to suspect something was off. Money was moving strangely. Our joint business accounts, once thriving, were bleeding out through shell invoices and consulting fees to names I didn't recognize. Vanessa and a forensic accountant she trusted helped me track it. Turns out, Aaron had been quietly draining our savings, rerouting cash through dummy LLCs registered in Florida, where Becca just so happened to have a cousin who specialized in financial management. I couldn't believe it. Actually, no, I could. He wasn't just cheating with her. He was investing in her, with my hard-earned money. But now, every wire, every transaction, every falsified invoice, documented, time-stamped, legally actionable. Aaron's paper trail wasn't just sloppy, it was self-incriminating. Meanwhile, in Miami, Jordan, an old friend of mine who worked in finance and also happened to be stationed in Miami, offered to check in discreetly. He messaged me 2 days later. They're staying in a short-term rental. Told people they just bought a condo, but no one's seen a deed. Becca's credit card got declined at brunch. Also, he's driving a rental, not his Tesla. I stared at the screen and felt no pity. Aaron thought he'd sail into the sunset with his new life. Instead, he'd run straight into a legal iceberg. And the woman he underestimated? She was the one who'd been quietly charting the whole map, preparing the knockout. By the time I left Vanessa's office, we'd filed for full control over all remaining joint business assets, a cease and desist for fraudulent use of my name in the failed apartment sale, financial fraud linked to forged documents, emergency court motion to freeze his personal and business accounts. And we weren't done. "I want him to feel it," I said softly. Vanessa looked up from her notes. "Oh, Kira, he's about to feel everything." Served cold and publicly, Monday morning, 8:52 a.m. Aaron stepped into a downtown cafe in Miami with Becca on his arm, dressed in one of his smug little polos and designer sunglasses, thinking the world owed him a round of applause. At 9:01 a.m., a man in a blazer walked up to their table. "Aaron Granger? You've been served." He didn't even get through half his cappuccino. The explosion. The documents were thick, nearly 60 pages detailing every instance of financial misconduct, civil fraud, forged signatures, and attempted property theft. Vanessa had stacked them perfectly, wrapped in legal fury, and tied with the ribbon of a temporary court order that froze everything Aaron still had access to. Bank accounts, frozen. Business holdings, under review. Pending Miami condo purchase, nullified due to criminal investigation. Aaron called me 10 minutes after he got served. I didn't answer. He texted, though. "What the hell did you do? You can't do this. Becca's freaking out. You ruined everything." I stared at my screen with the kind of calm you only feel when you know justice is unfolding exactly as planned. Becca's reality. Check it didn't take long for Becca to figure out she had bet on a fool. According to Jordan, she packed her things and left the rental 3 days later. The fantasy? Shattered. The man who promised her beachfront sunrises and a life funded by savvy investments was now knee-deep in legal mud. She hadn't signed up to be investigated by the IRS. And Aaron. He tried to call me again. Tried to negotiate. Let's be adults about this. We both made mistakes. We can fix this. But what he didn't understand was that I was being an adult. A very smart, quiet, dangerous one. The power shift. That Friday, I hosted a small business networking event for local women entrepreneurs. My boutique had partnered with a local magazine, and they'd chosen me to give the keynote. The room was full. Women of every age, background, and stage of reinvention. I spoke about resilience, about betrayal, about building something new after being broken by someone you trusted. I didn't say Aaron's name. I didn't have to. Halfway through my talk, someone asked, "What was the moment you knew you were done?" I paused. Then I smiled and said, "When he laughed about selling my apartment," and I realized he'd forgotten whose name was on the deed. The room went still. Then it erupted. Laughter, cheers, applause, the beginning of the end. By the end of that week, Aaron had retained a defense attorney. Vanessa had begun settlement negotiations from our side, with terms so brutal, even his lawyer flinched. And I had filed for full ownership of our remaining assets, citing his financial misconduct and fraud. But the best part? I hadn't yelled. I hadn't broken anything. I hadn't chased after revenge. I simply let the truth do its job. The deal he didn't see coming. The formal hearing took place 2 weeks later. Aaron looked like a ghost of himself. Hollow cheeks, loose tie, fake confidence cracking at the edges. His lawyer shuffled beside him, already exhausted. Meanwhile, I sat next to Vanessa, polished and poised in a navy suit, not a hair out of place. When the judge entered, Aaron looked at me, probably expecting me to blink, to hesitate, to flinch at the drama of it all. But I simply looked past him. The final offer. Vanessa slid the paperwork across the table. Aaron picked it up, eyes scanning quickly, then slowly, then in a near panic as he realized what was being laid out in front of him. I would retain full ownership of our apartment, business shares, and investments. He would walk away with no claim to spousal support. I would drop the criminal charges for the forged documents, but civil suits could still proceed. All funds he transferred into false business accounts would be repaid with interest or pursued legally. And then there was the non-disclosure clause. He couldn't speak about the case, the apartment, or me. Not online, not to the press, not even in whispers. Vanessa leaned in. He signs this, or we go to court. And Kira has all the receipts. Aaron's jaw twitched. You'd ruin me. I met his gaze for the first time. You did that to yourself. The public silence he signed, because men like Aaron don't survive public disgrace. He'd rather disappear quietly than face the truth out loud. The moment his pen hit the page, I felt something uncoil inside me. Not relief, not joy, but release. 8 years of love, lies, shared goals, and quiet betrayals. Signed away in a stroke of ink. An unexpected message. A week after the hearing, I got an email. No subject line, no grand apology, just a single paragraph from Becca. I didn't know. Not all of it. I believed him. I'm sorry for what you went through. I hope he never gets close enough to do this to anyone else again. Good for you. I read it once, then again, and I replied with only 2 words. So do I. The shift. My days grew brighter. I sold the apartment and bought a lakeside home. Small, serene, mine. The business flourished under new branding, new leadership, and a growing team of women who'd been through the same hell I had. We didn't call ourselves survivors. We called ourselves builders. Because revenge wasn't just about tearing him down. It was about rebuilding me. Stronger, sharper, freer. Closure doesn't always knock the lake was still. A mirror reflecting the gray morning sky as I stood on the deck of my new home, wrapped in a soft sweater, holding a warm mug of tea. It had been 3 months since the final hearing. 3 months since Aaron signed his name to a future he no longer had any control over. I didn't think about him much anymore, not out of hate, but because I had finally made peace with what he had taken from me, and more importantly, what he hadn't. The last box. In the back of my new closet sat a single box I had brought from the condo, labeled in black marker, then. Inside were old photos, anniversary cards, receipts from our first trip, the copy of our marriage certificate, and at the very bottom, a crumpled note Aaron had once written me on a post-it, back when things were still warm and simple. Don't ever leave me. You're the only thing keeping me grounded. I read it one last time. Let the weight of the lie settle in my hand. Then I lit a small match and dropped it into the fire pit on the deck. The paper curled, burned, disappeared. And just like that, so did the last piece of him that lived in my space. The letter I never sent. I had written Aaron a letter, weeks ago, during one of those late nights when the silence felt a little too thick. It wasn't angry or bitter. It was calm, measured, honest. You didn't just walk away. You tried to erase me. But I want to thank you. Because in tearing down our life, you forced me to rebuild something better. not because I wanted to prove anything to you, but because I remembered who I was before you. You turned your back on someone who would have carried you through any storm, and now you're the one caught in the downpour. I never sent it. I didn't need to. Legacy weeks later, I gave a talk at a women's leadership forum. Small room, 20 attendees, all strangers, until one woman approached me afterward. "I followed your story," she said quietly. "My husband left me for someone else too, tried to destroy me. But seeing you up there, thriving, I needed that." I hugged her. No words. Just a long, quiet moment between two women who had climbed out of the same burning house and built castles from the ash. The final page. Sometimes, people ask me if I miss Aaron. I don't. I miss the woman I thought I had to be to keep him happy. The version of myself that twisted into silence, that smiled through disrespect, that made herself small. But that woman, she's gone. And the one who replaced her, she's unshakable. Epilogue. Power doesn't always roar. The next time someone laughs while walking out of your life, let them. Because someday, when they look back to see what they left behind, they'll realize they didn't walk away from weakness. They walked away from the storm. You are not alone, and you are so much stronger than you think. Tap that subscribe button to join Veiled Revenge, where we share tales that heal, inspire, and remind you that even the deepest heartbreak can lead to the most beautiful new beginning. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that revenge isn't always about getting even. Sometimes it's just about getting better.